I'm excited to be joined today by Joel Richards and State Representative Brandy Fluker-Reid. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
I asked you both to join today because you both have an experience that's fairly unique to people in Boston, which is you have both run for elected office. And I wanted to talk to both of you a little bit about what that experience was like. This conversation was motivated by, on my part, I was looking at the Democratic primary ballot back in September, and there were so many uncontested races. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. We should always have people running against incumbents. Even if they lose, it gives incumbents something that they have to work for. So I think it's really important in a democracy that we have people running for office. So that's the spirit of this conversation today. Let's start by introducing yourselves, though. Joel, can I start with you?
Yeah, my name is Joel Richards. I've lived in Mass for the last 14 years. I was a teacher for 17. I taught for 17 years. Just recently in the last year, after my last run, I made it through the primary, but I lost, and people really said that people see me in a different light. So it was time to explore. So that entered into 6 months of no job, a lot of tears, crying, and prayer. But I ended up with actually 3 jobs. I'm a true Jamaican. I work for the Ron Burton Training Village, where I'm the retreats manager there, and really mentoring kids, helping schools build culture, bringing kids out of the city to, do that, what we call decompression, but also they need a digital detox, right? We have the most anxious generation ever, and people ask me, will I budge on the phones? And I say, no, we're not going to do that. But Ron Burton is an amazing experience. Please look it up for youth. If you know any kid that just has that desire to be better, but needs a little more structure, needs some mentoring, needs some help there. I also work for the Boston Collaborative, where I'm building a youth trauma rubric to help youth and to help families start their journey of care. A lot of times, my mentor, Jewel Robinson, always says this, that Boston is resource rich, but connective poor. And our whole job is to bring ministry and to bring people doing the work and to bring people like Representative, give me the last name again.
Fluker-Reid.
Fluker-Reid, new Reid. I didn't want to get it wrong. I didn't want no death stares. I wanted to be on good terms. Fluker-Reid, into spaces where people need help and where people are coming to the city to help people. And a part of that is access and giving people the language to be able to see what's going on inside of me, to do a scan, to do a check, what's going on in my child, what's going on in my wife. And so we're building a language rubric where people can actually have that. And then also I work with the Charles River Watershed, and we're trying to do some environmental projects in Mattapan. And then another project, we're trying to use our expertise to help Chez Vu do a renovation. I just learned that they have a family member has worked there since 1933, the same family. They bought the building in 91, and then their only roller skating rink in Boston, and they're Black owned. So to help them to rebrand, come back even stronger, and just what they do, they're a cultural center. So those are my 3 jobs. That's what I'm doing right now. I traded in the classroom, as my kids would say, for meetings. That's all I do. You're in a meeting again, so that's what I've done.
If they get rid of that 80s carpeting, I'll be very disappointed.
Well, get ready to be disappointed.
Brandy, can you please talk about yourself and why Joel is alluding to your last name change?
Oh, gosh, this is great. Sure. Hello. Thank you again for having me today. So my name is Brandy Fluker-Reid, formerly Brandy Fluker-Oakley. I recently got married New Year's Eve. Your Jamaican brother, so don't forget the Reid. So a little bit about me. I am from Boston originally. I was born here, and I like to say I'm from Mattapan, but when I was born, they brought me to the house in Dorchester. So my first 2 years of my life were in Dorchester, and then my mom moved to Mattapan. So I have to claim both, but
we'll share you.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. A little bit about my background. So by training, I'm a social worker, teacher, and lawyer. I've spent some time as a public defender, 3rd grade teacher, and also as a nonprofit leader and executive, doing some organizing, helping educational systems across the country, then doing trainings to help people be better managers with a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, which I know are bad words these days, but they weren't always. And then ultimately, I ended up running for office, and here I am today.
So tell us what made you decide to shift from that world to running for office. And I would imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's not something that you can do as a side gig, right? So you had to make a change.
That's exactly right. And I think for me, many people know my faith is very important to me. And so I try to really think about what is it that I'm being called to do at any moment in time. And as I reflected on my life, everything I've done has always been around helping people. My mom would say I've been an advocate from the time I could talk. I organized my first protest in the 3rd grade, my second in the 5th grade. By middle school, there was no stopping me. She was definitely called to the principal's office many a time because of my, what I like to call civil disobedience in the making, very good trouble. And so when I learned about this opportunity to run for office, I wasn't looking for it. My predecessor had decided to not seek re-election. Someone who was in the political world and had known my work previously in the city of Boston thought of me and gave me a call. At the time, I was living my best life with my best friend for her birthday. We were in Amsterdam, and this is like my best friend from kindergarten, so literally since '88. And we're just in the hotel, kikiing, cackling, talking about everything and nothing. This person usually text messages me. So when I saw them calling me, I said, oh, this is different.
Curious.
Like, what's going on? Picked up the phone and they just launched into the fact that Cullinane wasn't seeking re-election. It's going to be an open seat. They thought I'd be great for it. Told me all the reasons why. And I was like, I'm on vacation. He's like, did I ruin it? I said, no, but you gave me a lot to think about on my 6-hour plane ride back home tomorrow. So give me a week and I'll get back to you. And so I prayed about it, sought wise counsel, reached out to folks who I knew were currently at the time elected, who had seen my work, reached out to family members, prayed about it, and decided to throw my hat in the ring. And I will say, because of my faith tradition, I tend to think that God moves you when you're comfortable. And I was very comfortable in my previous life. And I like to say I was living my best life. I was diamond on Delta, platinum with Marriott. Like, I was not like happy to be a super voter in the city of Boston and contribute in those ways. But I was okay. But I really felt like, as my mom said, it was the best combination of all of my skills. She said her exact words. And if y'all may not know my mom, she's a Southerner by heart and the type of parent that will never give me praise, but will like be proud about me to other people. And so I've never really gotten verbal affirmation or accolades from her. And I remember got back from Amsterdam. My sister was with my mom because she had eye surgery, and I said, listen, family meeting, like when I get back from the airport, we got to talk. And I told them about the call, and my mom just looked at me straight face and said, everything you've done has primed you for this moment. And coming from her, that was like the highest praise. I said, okay,
Let's do it.
all right, here we are. So that's my story.
Nice. And Joel, you also, I believe, ran for an open seat. Frank Baker had retired. Is that right?
No, I ran for an open seat in District 4, but in District 3, he was still there. He was the incumbent.
Got it.
Yes, I ran for an open seat the first time. Very similar. I was not thinking about it. It was not on my radar. But I had done, I always say, through, through your suffering becomes your ministry, right? And so, justice became a huge part of education. I started my work in private schools where kids had all their resources in Atlanta, right? And so very much moving through that. But actually what inspired me to go into urban teaching, I visited a friend from Spelman here in Boston, and her program, she said there were no other Black students in the program. And I felt like, and this is before I was saved, I just felt like, no, we got to change that, right? Like this is something that has to change. And so I was like, I think I'm gonna jump into urban teaching. I'm gonna go get my master's in urban education. I'm gonna get into these schools, and we're gonna learn how to read. We're gonna learn how to do this. I'm gonna empower you to go on and like pursue higher education, right? And to show you that we can do it. I have a I'm gonna tell them I have a master's. You can get one too. I'm no different from you. And fast forward to coming to Boston, to getting into the Boston Teachers Union, to doing actions for students. And that's one thing I liked about my union in particular. It wasn't just all about our benefits and our medical. It was about like, no, Haitian students aren't getting the services they need. Our Hispanic students aren't getting the services they need. So let's rally around each other, our collective, and actually do actions for them, actually write letters. And I became the chair of Black Lives Matter at school to fight for counselors in the school because I just was tired of playing pseudo social worker. I wanted someone like Brandy to come in and be able, I can call you Yes. Okay. Thank you. I wanted someone like Brandy to be able to come in and actually provide the resources, provide the counseling, and advocate. And no, we have social workers. We have 2 social workers in most schools, or 1, and no one is like, I don't like my social worker. Everyone says I love my social worker. So that's the kind of justice work I was always doing. So when I got a call similar, it was like, no, District 4. Andrea Campbell just, is going to hire, going on where we've seen her trajectory. She was like, I'm going to do something else from this seat. It's open. You should run for it. And I was like, I don't see that at all. I don't think people see me like that. I think people see me more just like an advocate, a mouthpiece, just someone who, when something's wrong. But I did the same thing. I called all my mentors and they were like, no, this is what you need to do. And so I jumped in. I didn't make it through the primary that time. So I thought all of that was over. I thought, I tried, I did my thing. People were like, you did a valiant effort, but you lost. And, I went back to teaching, went back to my advocacy work, went back to, all of that, and writing on behalf of students and writing on behalf of teachers. I felt very empowered just doing that. I always said I was a part-time revolutionary, right? A full-time teacher and dad and husband. And so, but then I got redistricted into District 3, right? Okay. And I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm just living my life. And then it wasn't just one phone call. It was the amount of phone calls. But I was like, there's an incumbent there. And like, similar to what you said before, everyone was like, it's time for a change. The redistricting shows it's time for a change. And went to I always try to outsmart God. I was like, I'm just go to my mentors. They'll say no. They'll say, don't run against. And I called all and they were like, nah, it's time. It's time. Like, it's time, like you said, it's democracy. It's time to challenge that person. It's time to make them step up. Like, you've been there for a long time. And, I took a deep breath. And like you said, when you're very similar, when you're comfortable, I'm a tenured teacher by now. I have positions in the union. I'm like, I'm moving forward. We bought a triple decker. Like, I'm like, let's just, right? But it's like, no, like, this is the time that you're called to do this, right? And I feel like the trajectory of that changed a lot. Just going into a second election, there's a lot of doubt, like, am I going to lose again? Am I going to feel stupid again? And then everyone who kept jumping in after I jumped in was like richer than me and I had more money. And it was just like, things kept mounting up, but the support kept coming in, right? The phone calls kept going. And, I feel like I know my neighborhood really well. I door knocked 7 days a week. I talked to everyone I could. I knocked on every door. And I made it through the primary, which I was very happy with. It was a big moment for me to make it that far through, because I've heard all the percentages, but it was just a journey of like people seeing you, like you suggested, or like you said, like people seeing you, people understanding what you've been doing, and like all of your work coming together. And people are like, no, this is your next step. This is like, become full time in this, fight for justice, become full time in your advocacy. And that's how I felt about that. Yeah.
You both mentioned kind of having issues that were front and center for you, Joel. I know it was justice for you in education. Brandy, was there any one particular issue that you felt like you were passionate about that drove you? Or all the issues?
It's interesting you say that. So I've always been passionate about educational issues, which is where I kind of got my start in organizing policy and advocacy, especially being a classroom teacher. I was a school social worker, so like seen it from all lenses, if you will. And I think when the opportunity presented itself for me to run for office, it was what I call early pandemic. So it's 2020 and we're in Amsterdam, and this is when it's like, oh, well, it's only in this country in Europe, or it's only here. And at this point, I'm flying for work, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, but planes go everywhere. Like, they don't just stay in one country. They literally go everywhere. And I will never forget, decided to run in late February of 2020 and had the whole game plan of like the door knocking, the grocery store. I ride the T in public transit. So like going to the train stations, getting signatures, letting people meet me face to face and get to know me. And then within 2 weeks, total shutdown. And I remember saying in my prayer time with God, like, okay, God, like, I believe you know all things. Like, you knew that this was going to happen. What does that mean for me? And I shared the fact that it was early pandemic is because while education has always been like my preeminent issue that I cared about, in my previous role, what I loved about being able to train managers is we worked with progressive nonprofits all across in various issue areas. So environment, transportation, housing, criminal legal reform, And there are other issues I was passionate about. So I felt like I was kind of touching those issues by helping these managers be better supervisors and leaders of their work. And when the pandemic hit, for me, and especially being from Mattapan, still living in Mattapan, identifying as Black and a woman, just like seeing the disparities, it was as if all the inequities that we have always talked about for God knows how long, supported by however much data it's been supported by, were truly front and center.
Yep.
And there was no way to escape it. And I said, okay, well, we just can't keep doing same old like this. We have to do better.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't one issue, but I think the pandemic just crystallized all the inequities that we had to fight for. And that's what I've been trying to do since I got into office.
So tell me what you did first. You decided, you took that plane ride, you talked to your family, your mom said do it, God said do it. What did you do first? Did you just freeze?
Yeah. So it was a moment of freeze. And then the piece of advice I got was to reach out to current elected officials. And for me, not to do an endorsement because they're just meeting me. And I am a person, I don't know if y'all have ever done the Gallup Strengths Finder, like your top 5 strengths. I don't know if you've ever done those before.
Is it like a Myers-Briggs type of
It's
thing?
like it's of the Myers-Briggs vernacular.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is like Gallup Strength Finders. There's like 32 strengths, and then like your top 5 are like the ones that make you uniquely you. And one of my top 5s is input, which means I gather information and data. The downfall of that is people who have input are slow to make decisions. But another top 5 is activator, which is I can go right away. So I have the
you're in
perfect
conflict
balance.
with yourself.
Yes, all the time, all the time. And so I reached out to those elected officials just to know what was it like running for office? Like, what advice do you have for a first-time candidate? And some of those were in person because, again, it was pre-shutdown, and then many of those just happened virtually. And then it was all about collecting signatures because that's what you need in order to get on the ballot. Again, historically, I had envisioned being in person, knocking on doors, but then I couldn't do that, and everyone had stranger danger. So I was talking to my mom about it, and I don't know how this woman knows all the people that she knows, but she's like, I think they live in your district. So literally, I would I'd call someone up and tell them I was running for office and that, I need a signature, and then I'd have to tell them this is not you voting for me. This is just like my opportunity to get on the ballot so then I can try to convince you to vote for me. Like, this is just the first step. This is not a vote for me. And the request I would make to people is, can I either come to your house with a clipboard and Clorox wipes and literally like ring your bell, leave the clipboard, step away, you sign it, and then I go and like wipe down the clipboard and the doorknob and the doorbell. So that was option 1. Or can I mail you a ballot signature sheet with a self-addressed return envelope, and then you just send it back to me for me to turn in.
Arduous process.
that was what I did in order to get on the ballot.
And how many signatures did you have to collect?
Oh gosh, it's either 150 or 250, Erin. I forget which, but one of those is how many I needed to collect. And I collected the signatures. I got on the ballot, and that Friday after I was certified to get on the ballot, the SJC, I think it was 150 because the SJC changed the rules because of the pandemic, saying that digital signatures could be allowed. And also they were going to cut the number in half. So then only 75 signatures, I think, for my race were allowed, which allowed others to be able to shoot their shot at democracy, which is fine. But I thought to myself, I did all that work and ingenuity, like tried to make it happen. But it was time well spent for sure. And I also feel like running for office in my mind truly is a precursor of the amount of work that it takes to sustain office. And I'm glad that I was able to put in that sweat equity, if you will, because it hasn't stopped just because I've become elected. In fact, it's only ramped up, if not stayed the same.
Yeah. What was the next step? So signature collection, I assume you had the same experience there, Joel.
Well, because I ran twice in 2 different races, 2 different districts.
Yep.
It was just signature collection was both got the same advice, call electeds. We talked and just got a lot of advice. So it was like time to take and synthesize that. Yeah. And then like if the advice was repeated by like, 2 or 3 of them, okay, I'm gonna stick to this. This obviously is tried and true. And the signature explaining, hey, this isn't a vote, like having those conversations. I would say the first time was just trying to get the signatures and like understand. I was so worried about not getting them and just being embarrassed about not getting. The second time I was like, okay, I know I can get these, but let's use it as an opportunity. Okay, let's get lit early, right? Let's jump ahead of the things I already know that I need to do. and start like meeting people at the train station, meeting people out, like really getting a message down. This is the time to practice it. This is the time to get your messaging. So like the first 2 times were totally different, I would say.
How is that train station environment? You're just like, hey, can I have a minute?
Morning and afternoon are different.
Yeah.
It depends. And I first time the train was kind of working, so like people were on a rush. Second time the train had all those delays. So hey, you got 20 minutes upstairs or 20 minutes,
The train's not coming. I got
the train's not going anywhere, right? And I would talk, and it was actually funny because the MBTA officers, they were the same ones there. They're like, oh, you're here all the like they got to know me too, and like I would just talk to people as they were slowly going through, as they were waiting. I'm like, I just let you know it's 15 minutes. Could I just have a little bit of your time? And so I would say like, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, I don't like public. I'm sweating. Like, my back is covered in sweat. Like, every day I come from the train, I'm covered in sweat. Like, it's a very, like, nerve-wracking experience in that. But I would say that was the signatures. I think the first time was just the signatures. The second time was, I'm going to jump out ahead of this, right? I'm going to start running from this moment and from this part, and especially because there's an incumbent there too.
Right.
So I have to start like really moving, and it's a new district. So like, I'm inform you no longer live in this district. It was a lot of that, and it was like boom, 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 and just having that messaging down very early. I would say it just changed. I think it was just different in those 2 categories.
And I would just add, so for me, after finally getting the signatures and getting on the ballot, it was, okay, now how do I introduce myself to people when I literally cannot go talk to people, which is a completely different environment.
You're not running into them organically. You have to create.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I did a ton of phone banking. I used to joke, I felt like I worked for MCI, which is also dating myself. But I remember back in the day they had the MCI. Okay, you're not from here, neither. Never mind. Maybe for my Dorchester people, y'all who are like Boston locals might know that I'm not trying to shame you. I'm just like, y'all aren't with me in this story. So back in the day, there was a company, MCI, and they would have on like headphone headsets like we do now that have the mic. And like the commercial's like, oh, this is MCI. How may I help you? And like literally, that's what I felt phone banking. I was just like, hello, how are you? Like literally like 10 to 12 hours of nonstop calls, and which was kind of helpful because I'm a pacer when I talk on the phone, so I got in tons of steps, which I wasn't necessarily anticipating, so that was a value add. And then really getting my message out, which means that I had to send a lot of mailers to people's homes because, again, I could not go to their homes, which means that I had to fundraise a ton of money because mailers and paper and stamps are expensive.
Yeah.
Postage really, once you're doing bulk orders like that. So it was really nonstop. But it was good.
The good news is that your fellow race runners were all in the same boat. So it wasn't like you specifically had that disadvantage.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I wouldn't even call it a disadvantage. It was more of a challenge. And that's the work, too, is how do I solve for a problem creatively, cost saving, as efficient as possible, as maximizing my ROI as possible. And that is part of the work of being, in my mind, an elected official and representative, is problem solving and trying to do it the best way possible, the most effective way possible, and the most efficient way possible. So it all just felt like training ground for the actual job, even though there were some days I was like, what is going on?
I would say my election was a little later, but COVID was still going on. So I would say the difference between 4 and 3, District 4 and District 3. District 4, I was handing out masks and hand sanitizer, right? District 3, for my lighter hued, supporters, I was handing out sunblock, right? And lit, right? Yeah. So it was different because there was a heat wave going on in the other one, in my second run. So I would say that too, like just,
adjusting.
Wearing a mask and be like, can I take it off? Right? Do you want the mask on? You tell me where you want me to stand, just being very accommodating when you come to the door.
This is giving me so much PTSD right now, just remembering what
really,
this was like.
That time,
really,
right? Yeah.
I saw one of people knitting me masks all the time. Like that was, or people giving me masks. Like I have a custom mask. I was like, yeah, sure, at your door. Yeah. Like, it was like I'll give you your 6 feet. Even sometimes I would joke, I'd have a ruler, like a little tape measure. Look, and the other part, people were home.
Yeah.
Right. And because of the pandemic. So that was kind of an advantage. You would knock and you would see and you would meet people and they're like, I'm on a Zoom meeting. I'm like, I was paying attention to you. Give me 10 minutes of your time. Right.
Put yourself on mute and come over here.
Come on. What, they going to fire you? Who are they going to find? Right. Like.
So once you guys got into it, I can't imagine the grind of a typical campaign week. Like how many hours were you campaigning. Were you also still working a day job? You had families, presumably. Like, how did you balance all of that? Start with you, Brandy.
So there's no easy answer. I'm like, talk about PTSD. So I was still working full time when I ran for office. My organization just pivoted to doing everything virtually in the pandemic, but there were still obligations and things that I needed to take care of in order to earn my living. And then
But that
also,
was helpful because going into an office would have
that worked
been,
out that they went virtual. That was definitely like the silver lining blessing in disguise, I guess God gave me through the whole pandemic experience. And then the other component of it was my mom was healthy while I ran for office, which was great. She was like my number one volunteer. So that was a good thing. I didn't have that responsibility like I do now in terms of caring for her. But I can't understate, overstate, emphasize getting your name out there when people don't know, because I had never run for office before. So it's not like people knew me per se, like had seen that name on the ballot. Two of my opponents, they had run for office before, so they had some name recognition. And then another opponent who ultimately decided not to continue in the race, they were very connected politically in a way that I was not. So in that way, it kind of felt like I was somewhat of an underdog, if you will, which is why I don't think I really slept. I picked running back up during the pandemic as a way to like de-stress, and it was so great to be on the trail and see so many people on the trail too. So I'm glad we had the Neponset Trail there in the pandemic. But I would go running there in the mornings. I had a weekly Sunday ritual of a bath every Sunday night just to kind of like decompress, which I probably need to bring back into my life because it was lovely and it only happened during the first election cycle. And then it was, if I wasn't talking to constituents trying to convince them to vote for me, then I was reaching out to donors to try to raise the money to send out the mailers. Then there's some like logistical stuff in terms of approving what goes out or reviewing mailers, dealing with questionnaires. So I didn't have full campaign team, if you will, early on. So I remember doing the BTU's questionnaire and like doing that one by myself because it was like the first one doing the cycle and there was just me to figure it out. So doing the questionnaire process, going through the endorsement interview process, it's really team no sleep. I know I need sleep to function, but it was nonstop. And I'm not a caffeine drinker. I wasn't at that time. I just started drinking coffee like a year and a half ago. So it was really just like pure adrenaline. And prayer and encouragement, endorphins from the runs trying to push me through. Yeah.
You were in a position, I think, where you didn't have to go to physical events, though, because they weren't happening at that time, right?
But there were lots of virtual events.
Yeah.
Which I mean is nice. There were some evenings where I'm on this device, that device, like literally 3 or 4 devices in front of me trying to like be present because folks had scheduled meetings at the same time, which was nice that it was virtual instead of in person because Michaela will say we still have conflicts of evening meetings happening, whether they're virtual or in person. So that was definitely a blessing and a good thing. But my community is pretty vocal. So they pivoted. Most civic organizations and associations, they pivoted to virtual. Only a few disbanded. And when I say a few, I mean like 2 to 3 out of the 20 disbanded in the pandemic. Otherwise, there were virtual meetings, then there were town halls, then there were debates and candidate forums, and then local radio and news outlets. And I have part of Milton in my district, so like their local access TV, wanting to like interviewing every candidate, which was great. It was just nonstop.
And you, I think at the time, you were covering my neighborhood.
Yes.
And our civic went to outdoor meetings.
Yep,
so you
that's
still
right.
had to go in person.
Yep, and be there in the parking lot and have my little butterfly fold-up chair. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And Joel, you and I actually met at an event that you were attending as a candidate. So you were definitely doing physical meetings for the second run.
So, yes, I would say I ran during the pandemic and not. During the pandemic, I had more. There was more because everyone was online. Mm-hmm. No one was teaming up either. By the second time, people would team up and do stuff. Or the first time, no, you could spend a whole evening, 4 hours straight on different Zooms, on different meetings, popping in, popping out. Like I was in front of my camera. Like I know the lighting in my room, how to get lighting better. All sweating as always. And so like it was just a constant grind. I felt like in person was a little bit better because like it was a little limited, right? You could actually say, I got to be here across town. Could you take me again? When it's virtual, they're like, no, be here at 7. Just we'll put you in for 10 minutes. You're like, but I would say there was a lot of just like in-person meetings. I feel like there was a lot more charged issues in the third one too. And so you would go and you would be the only person that they had scheduled, and you'd be the only topic, and you'd be talking about one topic, whatever was important to that neighborhood.
And you had to have your ducks in a row. You had to come in ready to speak intelligently.
Right.
About it.
And on multiple issues because it was different per neighborhood. Where I feel like at the time, everyone had the same complaints, speed bumps, right? But now it's like if you go to and especially the new district, you go to Mass Ave, they have different concerns than the Ponset. If you go to the part of Dorchester, they have totally different concerns than all 3 parts of Dorchester, right? And so it's just, I want a new park. There's not enough dog space. So you have to really be on your messaging and really stay, like some people say, swim to your islands, or some people, like I feel like I really had to say, like, I'm going to stick to this message. It got to the point where one time I walked up and a volunteer, I heard that, I was like, that's good. Well, that's me. You just sound just like, I even said a joke to the constituent. They're like, hey, he said that same joke. I was like, dang. I was like, okay. So the messaging.
It's working.
It was just the same messaging over. He was like, and then the volunteer was like, it's easier to steal a joke than to make up one. I was like, dead. Right. And so like it was like the consistent messaging had to go out because of like, I had fewer points to meet people. I had fewer access points. And then my second race got crowded. It went from, I thought my first race was crowded, but the second race was crowded. Then I was the only black candidate. And so that was a whole nother issue. And then there's a lot assumed about me because of those things, and a lot of narratives pushed because of those things. But I would say staying on message, making sure like, God is pleased with how I'm acting, how I'm representing myself, how I'm talking about my other candidates, right? I don't want to go down that road where I could say negative things, but I'm not here for that. I'm here to do the work. I'm here to bring justice to this neighborhood. I'm here to make better schools, right? Our Morrissey Boulevard, our roads, all of that is overcrowded, and our air quality is bad. You go back to COVID. That's why we were most susceptible to adverse reactions to COVID, because of our air quality. Like staying on message, staying focused, staying on these things. And I feel like that was honed in the first run. Like I realized I can't have too many messages, right? But when you come to me, you know what I'm going to talk about already. Like someone will be like, I think one thing, I don't know if you're experienced when people pretend they don't know you, like when you go to the door and they act like, oh, who are you? And stuff like that. And then you give them, you're like, oh, I wanted to see if you were going to really stick to your messaging. Okay, yeah. Like, I was like, oh,
man.
Yeah.
You talk about the other folks in the race. One of the things I noticed about you, Joel, is that at the event I met you at, there were others in that race in attendance, and you all were so cordial to each other. You were also, it was not an adversarial relationship, which I think actually made a good impression on me. I'm not sure if it did others in the room, but I think that's notable that whoever can best serve this district is the right person, and you're not holding grudges or upset about, well, he's here or she's here, and none of that behavior.
Yeah, I never really saw other people as not saying like I didn't see them as competition. I wanted to win.
Yeah,
like that,
of course.
I wanted to win, but I never saw it as like I'm coming after somebody. I'm saying this is a time and a place where I feel like God opened the door. I'm walking through it. I'm going to do the things that I know are true to my character, true to the character that God developed in me, right? And I'm going to stick to that, right? And so, like, I have no animosity towards you. Even if you did say something about me, like, it's just not. I'm not going to go down that road because that's what you want in the end, anyways, right? So I don't want you to have any reason to dislike me, anyways, right? Like, I want it to be like, oh, okay, I met him. He's actually who he says he is. I'm actually what I'm presenting.
And you also never know what the future may hold. Maybe you'll be working with that person at some point down the road, or you might be in office in another capacity and have to have a relationship. So it's a really good practice to not create enemies. What surprises did you both encounter during the campaign that you were like, whoa, I did not see this coming?
I would say the fundraising.
Oh.
You saw that coming?
Yeah. I used to be an executive director, though.
That's
so
right.
it's like,
That's right.
Paper
I'm
does
just-
not grow on trees.
Right. I'm a lowly teacher. I'm used to just being broke, like. So they're like, I need how much to do how much? Well, stamps are that expensive. Can't I just walk it around and put it in their box? Like, like I'm there anyways, right? And so I would say that, like the grind of that, like that just takes hours and hours of your time. And, like I called like my old high school football coach, right? But I say the best part is I have caught up with everyone I've ever known. I've caught up. I mean, like even talking to my old, like again, my old football coach, he's like, you have kids? Like just like, like talking like that. And I would say also I had a baby in the second campaign.
Wow.
Yeah, August.
Congrats.
Yes, so I have a almost 2-year-old. He'll be 2 in August. My kids are in order. My oldest is in June, my middle's in July, and my youngest is in August.
Nice.
Teachers have babies in the summer, and so, and I would say that was like, the rallying of support. Just my wife being amazing through that, and being like not like, like, oh, you got to go out and knock, I know this is what we've signed up for this together. I would think the level of support. I remember someone told me, I can't remember which politician told me this. It was like, what you'll be most shocked about is the support you get. It'll be from people you don't expect. It'll be from people you never met before. You just never know where it's going to come.
I think I told you that.
It might
be. Because that's my biggest takeaway.
I didn't want to give it to you just because you were here.
No,
but I was I'm pretty sure.
Because,
yeah.
No, that was my biggest. When you asked the question, I'm like, who showed up? And like talk about like folks from the woodwork. So I went to Early Childhood Center in BPS. It was the Rosa Parks, which is now moved to Mattapan and is like the Ellison Rosa Parks. But the original Rosa Parks was at the intersection of Quincy and Blue Hill Ave. And this is early 80s. I'm an 80s baby. So I was only there for 6 months. That's a whole nother story. But literally the director of that daycare or the Early Childhood Center that was in the Rosa Parks on Quincy and Blue Hill Ave saw my poster and found my mom's office number because she was working from home and for herself at the time. Called my mom and said, hey, this is Alan Batts. I was Brandy's early childhood teacher. I'm so excited for her. I always knew she was like, and just like, how can I help? How can I support? And I was like, I have not seen this man since literally 1987. It is now 2020. And so there were just family friends that we had lost touch with. And I had done some political trainings over the years. And one of the things that they said around fundraising is go through your entire phone book, and just say, hey, I'm running for office. Like, can you chip in? Can you pitch in? I got a Black mama from the South, so I'm used to being told no. So that's not going to be my barrier to asking someone for something or for money. And because I was running in the pandemic, that was a somewhat trepidatious time because some folks were losing their jobs and were unemployed, or there was so much uncertainty around the economy and what was going to happen. And the range of response I received from folks was either like, oh my gosh, yes, the world is so depressing. And I felt like people giving me like their life savings, which was so humbling and like brought me to tears. Or people saying, I really can't. I just lost my job, but I can make 2 hours of phone calls, or like I can do this instead, and like finding other ways to be supportive, which was just as equally wonderful. And so I think I was just most surprised by the amount of people from my entire life's journey that somehow managed to show up. And it was just unforgettable.
Yeah.
And I've been a public employee both times that I ran. So I'm not allowed to ask for money. So that was also like, my wife would grab the phone and be like, hey, could you give and like, or in the second one, my oldest, he'd be like, my dad's trying to change the city. Oh. Could you, I'm like, got you with the kid guilt.
So we talked about surprises. Is there anything you would, in hindsight, do differently? Oh. And you both ran twice. So you ran for re-election and you ran twice, Joel. So maybe you did things differently that you can speak to.
Oh, the two campaigns aren't even comparable, right? Like the imposter syndrome that I felt in the first one, the doubt, like the constant rebranding and messaging, like just not knowing, being taken advantage of. That's something you don't want to really talk about a lot, but you do get taken advantage of. Just it's gonna happen. People are gonna come in, and everyone says, "Oh, well, you earned it. Now it won't happen again," right? And so, who to talk to, what advice actually fleshed out and was true. All of that really comes to a culmination the second time you run. You're like, oh, no. Before, what I was saying, like before I was building the plane while it was flying, literally. Oh, we need wings. I'm about to crash, right? Like this. No, this time launched, right? Like I went into the second one. I was like, well, there's an incumbent there. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it like we're doing it for TV, right? And so we kicked it into high gear, like really went at it confidently, prayerfully. I talked to everyone I knew. I called everyone I knew right away. It wasn't like, I'm running for this thing. I don't know. No, I'm running for office. Can you support me? Can you help me? Can you do these things? I need you to do this. I need us to get a flyer for this. Calling people right away, getting lit. I think I had it lit a week after I decided to run, right? Where before it was like a month or two, maybe, I kind of need lit, like this is my messaging. No, let's get together, all my friends, what's our messaging? What's bothering us? What's most important in this city? What do people want? Like, instead of asking people what my message should be, I was like, this is the message. This needs to change. This is this. So I would say the two wouldn't even know each other if they met, the two elections. So, yeah.
I would say for me, a couple of things. Certainly the imposter syndrome resonates. And for me, identifying as a woman and also as Black. And there were 2 times I can remember in my first campaign where I was listening to the advice of the folks I had surrounded myself with. And in those 2 instances, I wish my message had been different. But because it was my first time running, they identified in these 2 instances they had identified as non-people of color, and they had been around like the political game, the political world. So I felt like my thoughts weren't valid, or that I couldn't say what my truth was in those 2 instances. And those are like my 2 biggest regrets from the first time I ran. The second one, this was actually my campaign manager's thought, but I 1,000% agree with it. She said, if we had to do this race over, I would sit down with Brenda Fluker and say, who are all the people you know? Because the amount of people, so my mom helped me with the signatures and like, I think this person lives in district, or this person might live, in the bounds. So she was instrumental in that regard. But then there were just so many other people I met along the campaign trail, whether I was phone banking or door knocking, or in August when I did like social distancing door knocking because it was a little safer then to go outside, and they were like, oh, I worked with your mom at Liberty Mutual, which was like 1979, or like, oh, I know your mom, or oh, your mom did the clothing on my head. Like, it was just like my mom's name kept coming up, and I was like,
She was holding out
and
on
I would
you.
go home, right, and I'd say, oh, mommy, I met your old client so-and-so. She's like, oh, yeah, so-da-da-da. And I was like, you didn't tell me they lived in, like, it's like all these people. So my campaign manager says if she could do it over, she would sit down and say, okay, Mommy B, who are all the people that you know, and in touch base with them. And I think my mom is the gift that keeps on giving. So I
Sneaky
agree.
secret weapon, yeah.
Well, she's an introvert. She keeps to herself. It tracks for her brand, but yeah.
Yeah. Advice. Someone's ready to run. They're thinking about running. What would you both talked to people before you got started. What did they give you that you would pass on, or is there anything original that you would share?
I'll share original, and I'm sure other people would agree with this, but from my learnings and my experience is to definitely be true to yourself, full stop. And I'm going to pick up on something that Joe had kind of mentioned in passing earlier, is I didn't see my competition as my competition. This was my race to run and my race to lose. Regardless of who else was in the race, it was like, how am I putting in the work that I believe my community deserves, that reflects who I am and what I stand for as a woman, and doing that repeatedly and really focusing on my race. And I think it's so easy. Yes, you have competition. Yes, you all are competing for a limited number of votes, in any election cycle. But at the end of the day, like, it is literally you versus you.
Mm-hmm. It's not being beat. It's not winning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And even so, I remember it was maybe 7 to 10 days out before election. One of my mom's friends that we had lost touch with hosted a fundraiser. She was a teacher but retired, so it was all above board. Hosted a fundraiser in her backyard, and they had reconnected after decades of losing touch. And I remember I'm in AKA, so we have little line sister chat, and I remember texting some of my line sisters, and I said, if I don't win this race, God's will has already been done, just in terms of like the relationships that were restored and renewed, both for myself and my mom throughout the process. So it was one of those things where it's like, I've already won,
There is no
regardless if I
losing.
win.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no losing, even if I lost the race of being state rep itself.
I would say get ready. If you're not already, get ready to fall in love with your city even deeper. The people that I met, like, I feel like one thing I added to my messaging was just like, no, I live in the hardest working, greatest part of the country. Like, you'd meet people on the way to work and they tell you about their job and they tell you about their kids. You're like, this is amazing. Like, this is the point of doing all of this, right? Like, to fight for them, right? To work for them, to do the work. You know, like someone asked me, what's my, political ideology? It is that that harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few, right? Like, we are out, there's no bus stop any day in Dorchester that's not crowded. There's no trains. The train is always crowded. Rain, snow, freezing cold, heat. We're out there and we're doing the work, and it is a place worth fighting for. That's the only advice I can give you. Like Brandy said, just go into it full on and know that you're doing it for the right people. And that's the people of Dorchester and of Boston. They are working hard and they're doing the thing. So,
And if I could just add to that, because what Joe just said is one of my favorite verses, is like, there's plenty of work, but very few folks willing to do the work. And in my mind, and I say this when I like speak in front of youth in particular, it all starts with service. Like, it's all about giving back to a community that you care deeply for, whether you were born here or not born here, whether you were raised here or not raised here. And you don't need a title to serve. And I think so often, especially folks, who may not be in elected office or have whatever high ranking title, they think, oh, what can I contribute? I may not be as valuable, or what I have to give isn't enough. And I would just like to squash, stomp on, kick out that train of thought and mentality. Like, it all starts with service, and you can serve in any capacity. You can visit the old lady who may not have any kids, or her kids live out of state. You can drop by on a Sunday or Saturday and bring her coffee or tea or muffins. You can go to the bus stop on a hot summer day and offer people water. And I'm not saying to do things that I didn't do myself. I remember one time I went to go take a walk in the park down the street from my house. This was probably 2014. I was so stressed and I was like, oh, I just want to walk. And I went down there, and y'all, the amount of litter and trash that was just, I couldn't even have a peaceful walk. I turned right back around, got some gloves and garbage bags, and walked right back down to the park and just picked up all the trash. Wow. And there was some construction happening, and the construction workers saw me. Then they started picking up trash too and putting it in the bags. Like, I didn't have a title. I didn't like post it on Facebook or social media or anything to that effect. I did email somebody at a local organization like, hey, I just picked up all this trash. Can you like empty the trash bags at this park, and like, can we do better? But you don't need a title to serve. And like, there's plenty of work that can be done that I would encourage people to do, whether they have the title or not.
I love that. I love that. All right, last question. What is your go-to Dorchester restaurant?
No, that question is not fair. Like, because there's Vietnamese food, there's Cape Verde. I always say all we need is an Australian restaurant, and we have all the continents covered, right?
Well, we discussed last week with Bill and Linda Forey that there's no sushi in Dorchester, so we need to. Where is that?
Tayoshi is right. See, that's what I'm saying. Right on Adams Street. And we go there. That's if you ask my kids sometimes on a Friday what they want, they be like, give me banh mi and sushi. We have to go to the banh mi, we have to go to Ballet, and then we have to go to Tayoshi and get the sushi, right? Like, there's no.
So you're declining? You're declining the one go-to?
No, Dorchester is the best place to go to eat. Like, because there's no, like, you can't, we go to multiple restaurants on a Friday to get what we want. Like, we might go get a fish sandwich from Vaughn's, and then I get wings from Sauce, right? Like, there's like, you gotta diversify on what you want. And
you've got 5 people you're trying to satisfy.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah. One place is tough.
You might get buffalo pizza from Antonio's, right? And then go back to Sauce for garlic parm. Like, there's different, you gotta, I don't know.
Brandy, are you going to play by the rules?
I am going to play by the That was a very political answer, Joel. So I think running for office is still in your future.
That's what the kids call, that's big back answers. That's
not big back answers. And I think I'm so glad you had, because tonight is Taste of Dorchester, which is like Maha's annual fundraiser. And so I can't wait. Michaela is stoked. Yes. We're going to treat ourselves to all of the wonderful
everything
eateries
I just named, right?
That we have here in Dorchester. I would say for me, and there are many favorites, I'm a big fan of Yellow Door. That's also where I met my husband, randomly at Yellow Door. So I have to give Yellow Door some love because
Yes.
I may not have met him if they didn't exist. So, you know, there's that. And of course, I love Tavolo because, I mean, it's just right there. And it's good food, good service at both places. And for the record, I stop by every other restaurant in between those, whether it's Pat's Pizza, Lower Mills Tavern, the Bower
That's what I'm
Free.
saying. Like, I don't know.
There's no
how you-
shortage of food.
I don't know. How you, like, you can go to only one. You can go to
Like-
only one Jamaican, eat oxtail, and then go get drinks at Tavolo. Like, this the
Well,
best city.
and my husband loves Murrell's, which isn't in the 12th Suffolk. So all those that I just named are in the 12th, but Murrell's is in the 5th Suffolk and Murrell's district. But
Yes.
loves Murrell's kitchen. Like, I mean, the food is plenty. But well, I say my go-to in a clutch when it's like, oh crap, I didn't cook. Like, we need
Yeah.
to eat. There's nothing thawed. 9 times out of 10 is probably going to be
Tavolo or Yellow Door.
Yellow Door.
Okay.
Yeah, or Tavolo. But my mom loves the meatball at Tavolo. So it's like, oh, well, does she need dinner? Okay, let's pick up ours at Yellow Door, then go get the meatball at Tavolo.
Everybody's doing the
Bring it to her.
multi-stops.
It's a real thing.
It is a
It's
real thing. Like, there's like, if you want, like, same thing. Sometimes you got to be healthy with the kids, right? So you can't,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So you got to go to Lambert's, right? You got to go
yeah,
to Lambert's.
Lambert's. I was
You
there
got to get a
yesterday.
salad. You got to, you know, you might get a slither of the calzones. Keep that smaller. Bring that knife more forward, right? Like, get a little bit, right? So I think that's just not a fair question. You can, if you ask downtown, you ask somewhere else, then you can pick your favorite. But in Dorchester, I think that's
All right,
that's
I will
awesome.
take that feedback. Maybe I'll revise that for the next episode. But Brandy and Joel, thank you both so much. I hope that this inspired some folks to think about running for office. And thank you both for the work that you've done.
At the very least, they'll go get sushi at Toyota.
All right, when we come back, we will have a Tiny Dot concert.